Live interpretation is available in Portuguese and Spanish. We would like to remind you that our audience comes from 5 different nationalities all around the world. We represent 5 universities with different cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs. And we created these e-conferences as a safe place for you to share your opinion, talk to others, and just connect with the mutual understanding of the topic that is being discussed. And we would like to ask everyone to respect each other's opinion and accept different point of view you might have.
Then, with further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Maria Pral. And Maria is a social entrepreneur. She trained in civic education and part of the Competendo project, which was funded by Erasmus+. And she attended the School of System Change by Forum for the Future, where she got in touch with the deep democracy approach, which she will introduce us to in our session. So the floor is yours, Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm very delighted to speak to you today. Democracy and democratic values is a huge topic. And so I decided that I would like to share one thought and one story with you in order to understand what democratic values could be in the global classroom. I have prepared a slide, so let's see if this is going to work. Okay, great. So some years ago, when we also worked in the Competendo project, I've had a talk to a person who said to me a sentence which really hit me. And he said, you know, one of the challenges of democracy is that the majority has the power over the needs of the minorities. And I give you a second to think about this sentence. The majority has the power over the needs of the minorities. And so what is it about? What is it actually meaning? So usually we vote and the majority wins. And to give you a very small example from a classroom, I will tell you a story we had about 3 years ago. And we had a global classroom and we were about 18 people and we wanted to communicate outside of the classroom as well. And we were thinking about a messenger. And so there was a vote on WhatsApp versus Signal. And WhatsApp got 15 votes in favor and Signal got 11 votes in favor. So using the majority principle, we would have gone for WhatsApp. But this is the thing over here to understand. There were people who didn't vote for WhatsApp. And what were their needs? Why did they not vote for WhatsApp? And we started to discover this a little. And here is what I would like to share with you about the deep democracy approach, which is sometimes hard to do very general and a huge group, but especially in classrooms, it's a very good approach to train democratic values. So the assumption of deep democracy is that each of us has different views and each view has the right to exist. So it is okay to say, I can imagine this and I can imagine this. So it is not 0-1, but there is a spectrum and there are many thoughts. So the next assumption of deep democracy is to say there is wisdom in the minority voice. And this is a really beautiful sentence from my point of view. There is wisdom in the minority voice. And I give you a second to think about this. How are you dealing with ideas that go against your beliefs? Do you devaluate or do you look for the potential and the wisdom in it? Yeah, so there is a wisdom in the minority voice. And what we did in this special case, we asked the people who said, I can't imagine to communicate in WhatsApp, what is your concern? And people started to speak about data protection and who is reading what they are writing. Is it safe? Is it commercial? And we had a very intense and vivid discussion about using WhatsApp. And then we asked people what speaks against Signal. And we had also a vivid discussion for this. And it's very important to understand that conflict is a potential to grow in the classroom. It is not about avoiding conflict. It is not about putting things under the carpet. It is about to grow. And we can learn from these different perspectives. Yeah, so people in the discussion, for example, said, oh, yeah, this data protection is actually an issue. So I would like you to think about how can we deal with conflict in a classroom. And deep democracy has also a very interesting thought, which says there are stages of resistance if different views are excluded. So there will be the conflict anyway. So you can invite it. Yeah, you can open the door for it. And maybe the resistance in the beginning is just covered so that you hear some jokes and sarcasm. And then it turns that people go slow, people coming late, and then it goes into an overt resistance, so that people start to strike or they separate, they don't come to the class anymore. And so if people and their views and their wisdom is unheard in the global classroom, you will feel it if you watch these signs. Yeah, so when people start coming late, ask yourself, what is going on over here? And a very important question in deep democracy is the question, what do you need to get along? And so in this special WhatsApp Signal discussion, I asked people, okay, what do you need to get along? What do you need to get into this WhatsApp vote? And people said, hey, let's think about how do we use it? How do we take care that our data is protected? And as a classroom together, we came up with some guidelines and principles. And in the end, everybody used this WhatsApp group we created afterwards till the very semester. And I'm sure that if we have just voted, that people wouldn't have used it. They would have used their signs of resistance, not committing, not answering, not writing into the WhatsApp group. Yeah, so I hope that this short introduction makes sense to you. And to summarize, what can you do in the global classroom to foster democratic values? First, invite different views, perspectives, and opinions. They all have the right to exist, and also they might be conflicting. They really bear the potential to grow. Look for the truth and the minority voices and use the potential to learn from them. And it is about consent, not consents. So it's not that everybody needs to have the same opinion, but that you have like a shared understanding. And it is about sharing power and responsibilities for the solution. It is not that you need to create a solution, but you have this very powerful question of what do you need to get along? And this helps that people can find a common practice and a common solution, and that people can start to build common ground together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this introduction.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. So now we will move on with our next segment. But before that, just an important note for every one of our participants. If you have any questions to any of our panelists, you can write it in the Q&A section, and we will keep in mind of those questions and we will answer it at the end of the conference. And also, if the audience at Paris Saclay, if you have any questions, then save it for the end of the conference and you can ask them live. So up next, we are going to show you some videos and also take some polls. We like to ask the general public's idea, meaning the students of the 5 Igloo universities, and we managed to collect quite a lot of video footage from them saying their own ideas about democratic values. So the first question that you will be able to see from their viewpoint is, what comes to your mind when you think about democratic values?
When I think about democratic values, the first thing that comes to my mind is equality, justice, and diversity, and life itself.
Well, when I think about democratic values, the first thing that comes to my mind is are the values that makes us the society we are now. And like, for example, freedom in terms of freedom of speech and equality in terms of equality before the law, and how important they are, and how we should always think of them as not only as rules to live by, but as goals to be achieved.
The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about democratic values is equality. Everyone should be treated equally, regardless of their origin, their religion, the language they're speaking, or their outer appearance, and should be given the same opportunities. The second value would be freedom of speech. It is at utmost importance for everyone to be able to speak out loud their mind.
So first and foremost, what pops up in my mind are all kinds of different ideas related to tolerance and respect. That might be equality, that might be equity, freedom of speech, or even fairness in all kinds of different situations. And I think generally just that respect and tolerance for different perspectives and different opinions, and the energy or willingness to find compromises and solutions that involve everyone included, or everyone affected.
What comes to my mind when I first think about democratic values? Well, I believe that democratic values are fundamental beliefs or constitutional principles that unite a group of people. Let it be either a nation, a club, or a society, but these represent the basic moral code of a democratic political system. First words that actually come to my mind are liberty and equality among its participants, and a central or kind of indispensable worth of an individual as part of a group, right? That these individuals, that they should work together not only for themselves, but also for the greater good of its people. And this all in order for a leadership to to achieve a sort of balance, I would say, between liberty and equality.
And when I think of democratic values, I think of our election process in the United States, because I'm American. And there we have a lot of emphasis on the freedom of choice, and the ability to choose who is making decisions for yourself or for your community.
When I think about democratic values, I think first and mostly about participation. I think in our society is what defines more a democratic society, the level of participation of its citizens.
Democratic values are values that kind of set the base for our government and for generally our whole way of living in democracies all over the world. And yeah, I'm talking about values like, human rights, fundamental rights like freedom, like equality and dignity.
Okay, now it is time to share your own opinion. Just a second, I'm going to start the poll. Okay, you should see now the first poll where the question is, do you know who to turn to if you want to know more about democratic representation at your university? So you can choose between yes, no, and unsure. We're just going to give you about 30 seconds to answer it. Okay, I think we do have most of the answers. I'm going to share the answers with you. So it's more or less half-half, that some people know about the representation at the university and some not. And now we would like to ask our audience in Paris, maybe you can raise your hand if you know to whom you can turn at your university. Okay. Okay, some know. I've seen, think about 3 hands. And who of you don't know whom to turn to? Okay, I see some more hands. Great. And is there anyone unsure? Okay, so thank you very much for this, for the answers. And then I'm going to stop this one.
And now we will proceed with the second video in which the students answer the question, how important do you think democratic values are and why?
And so I think in that sense, democratic values are highly, highly important and relevant in our everyday life. Why? Because they really represent a working atmosphere and a moving forward that is very inclusive. So that might be in education, that might be in university courses, that might be in working places, that might be in the way we treat each other, or in the way that political decisions are made, in the way that different hierarchies and different organizations work together. So really, I think democratic values should be the basis of decisions made in all of these kinds of situations, in order to ensure that we are moving forward as inclusive as possible, but also as respectful and tolerating and, yeah, mindful and productive as possible for everyone that is affected.
So in order to reach the goal of justice and peace all over the world, I think we need to agree on these democratic values, and they have to apply to everybody, regardless of nationality, gender, sex, religion, or else. So, in my opinion, they are mandatory to allow everybody to have the same chances and possibilities.
Yeah, firstly, democracy at its core is the power of the people to make a change, right? Democracy does not mean that a single individual governs a group, but that everyone gets the same treatment and opportunities, regardless of race, religion, or richness. For a society or a group of people that strives or believes for the best for its peers, I think that justice and truth must be central values among them. I also think that a democracy cherishes individual freedom and generally believes that these laws or rules should not be repressive, but they should rather establish a sort of a social contract between its leaders and its people. I think that a little order can be sacrificed in the name of liberty and the common well-being.
Well, they are very important. If we think of the societies we live as the society we compose now, I think they are very important because they make us living together possible. They enable the different mechanisms. For example, not only I don't want to reduce democracy to electing officials every now and then, but it's a process we all construct every day with our actions. What we expect, how can we contribute to our societies, and I think those values they direct us towards that the ultimate goal of peace and living together.
Obviously very important. Why? Because the state authority is being built by the citizens of that state. If that's not the case, then the result is inequality. And another result of that will be unhappiness. There were many past examples in this world where unhappiness was a case, and we should be thriving for a happier world.
I think these values are really important, especially the diversity of people and their religion, the way they dress, their sexuality, the different nationalities, and then all of this. I think it's really important to understand them and learn how to respect them, and to understand that this is how they live their life, and if it's no harm to us, they just go on and be happy in their life.
Having a democratic process is really important because it allows citizens and residents to have choice in what decisions are being made. And I think that is like the foundation for a good society and having a thriving society. It may not be everything in order to have a thriving society, but it's certainly like the foundation necessary for that to happen.
Okay, it's time again for another poll. Just a second. So the poll question is that, do you think democracy could be the same in each country? And now it's time to vote, and then we're going to ask our audience again. Okay, it seems like that no votes are coming in anymore. Then I'm going to stop it. So it's quite, most of you think that it's not possible to have the same values in each country, and some of you are as well, or some of you think it's possible and some are unsure. Then I'm going to ask again the audience in Paris. So what do you think, or do you think democracy could be the same in each country? Who of you is voting for yes? Then you can raise your hands now. Okay, who is voting for no? Okay. And is anyone unsure? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the feedback. And now it's time to play our third video for today, which focuses on the question, do you think your university has a good approach towards democratic values, and how do you think they should improve? So let's see what the student said.
I think our university has a good approach towards democratic values. We have the student association that tries to promote all these values. They do a lot of activities to make sure that everybody in school feels included, and they always try to bring up the issues of today.
I think my university is trying its best to have a democratic education and to treat everyone equally. And I think they have a really positive point of view on everything. And I just hope it's working because they have many rooms to help the international students, for example. And these mentoring groups are students. So it's like students helping out students, which I think is really good. They help them settle down in Szeged with accommodations and everything, but not only with that, they also help them to become part of the society and to feel welcomed here. So I think that's really beautiful. Even though the university is trying its best with being equal with everyone, there are still many professors at our university that their personality or just their point of view, it's not fitting with the university. So I feel like there's still many discriminations around. Some happen to me, some happen to my friends. It's still there, but I still feel protected in a way that we have a chance from the university to change the professor who's willing to fail somebody just because of their nationality or religion or something. We still have the chance to change them or just ask for a different teacher at an exam.
I think, well, in my case, I believe the values that make up the LMU are very, very much democratic. I would say they are very compatible to the ideas of democracy we have and how we operate. I also believe that universities itself are very important for the development and for the advancement in terms of democratic values as sources of critical thought and as places where discussions take place and people debate. They are instrumental to the implementation of those values in everyday life. And I think the way we can improve this is probably to try to engage more groups into the conversation, because of course students are an important group, but we should try to create spaces for all those involved to be able to engage in meaningful discussions within the university, and also try to involve people from outside of the university, the civil society, because only then we will have enough actors to engage in discussions about our society and how we shape the democracy we want to live in.
That's a difficult question, so I think I'm gonna refer to what I think a university can do for a deeper understanding of the importance of such values. So the task of a university is to transfer knowledge, right? So I guess a very important point is the promotion of intercultural exchange. And that's something the LMU does, for example, by Erasmus exchanges and many other opportunities. But I think the accessibility of such an exchange could be improved, because in my experience it's very difficult, especially for students from outside Europe, to come to Germany and study here, especially in a so expensive city as Munich. Yeah, I think we could do that better. And also, maybe the ability of students to make use of their freedom of expression and their freedom of opinion could be improved maybe by a wider and more intense discussion of democratic values at the university.
To answer this question, you have to think, and for me, perhaps this is the most important problem, is if there's a good communication between the university and, I was going to say we the people, but the pupils and other members of the institution. And I don't think it has. So, number one for me is to improve the channel of communication between university and, in this case, my case, PhD student, the students. So until this problem is solved, there can be no question of speaking about democratic values and all the other issues that comes with this. How can the university improve this approach? By improving its communication.
The last question, if I think that my university is having a good approach towards democratic values and what I think that they may do to improve this approach, is rather a difficult question, I would say, because I think the LMU is a very, very big university, and sometimes it's not as transparent or visible where the democratic values are expressed or lived in the everyday life as a small student in such a big institution. However, at the LMU, there are many, many different institutionalized measures and also mechanisms that include a lot of different perspectives in decision-making processes, for example, where they make sure that students form their opinions and represent these opinions when decisions are made, and different stakeholders and stuff like that. So it's a very inclusive process. However, I would also say that sometimes it's a bit difficult to remain or to keep the bigger picture and see where exactly this approach could be improved. I also think that for some courses, it might be a little bit easier to see where democratic values are expressed or where they're not expressed. My courses are usually very content heavy, so there's not as much room for democratic values to be expressed, or rather where they're very visibly discussed or where we engage a lot with them. Rather, it's kind of a natural way of moving forward, I guess. So yes, I think it's rather difficult to say where exactly we can improve this approach. Perhaps it's rather easier to see when democratic values are not lived or not expressed. But yeah, I think what the LMU is doing great is having mechanisms and having in their system different measures to ensure that democratic values are always part of the process. And I am a very great fan of that.
Do I think the LMU does right as a democratic institution? Yes, I believe it as a whole. I think that we as students have had the opportunity from the first day onwards. We have had the opportunity to participate in a lot of decision making in the university, both in classes and in things regarding the whole institution, as well as I've always felt, at least for me that my input has always been valued in any discussion. Maybe I think the work could be that professors are more in touch with their students, which can be hard given that there's literally thousands of us. But I do think the LMU does a really good job in this.
I think it's, I would say probably not, but they have the best democratic values. Am I supposed to say that?
You can say what you want.
Just because I don't see a lot of communication between my university and myself. So it would be great to see more of that, just communication between me and what's going on, and the ability to maybe choose what happens at the university, because students are the most important part of that, of what is happening. So.
There are elections of student representatives to LMU's faculty student councils. So everyone that is enrolled at LMU is able to vote for their representative. What I've heard might be the problem is that many don't know exactly what these representatives are heading for in the future. So maybe if they write down a detailed program, everyone can read that. And by that, they can be more specific on who they want to vote for.
Okay, so it's time for our last poll today. And the question is, do you think your university puts enough effort in educating democratic values? And again, you have the option between yes, no, and unsure. Okay, the answer is coming fast in. Okay, seems like that everyone has answered already. Then I'm going to stop it. And most of you think that your university doesn't put enough effort in educating democratic values. And some of you are even unsure. And the minority agree that the university puts enough efforts in educating democratic values. Thank you. Coming to Paris. What do you think? Do you think your university puts enough efforts in educating democratic values? If you want to vote for yes, you can raise your hands now. Okay. If you want to vote for no, then you can raise your hand now. Okay, thank you. And if you're unsure, you can vote now. Perfect. Thank you very much.
And now we will proceed with our next speaker from the University of Szeged. His name is Tamás Racsko, and he is the head of the central department responsible for the academic and administration of the University of Szeged. His other duty is to give the organizational background of the internal and external study program accreditations, to coordinate the work of the related university bodies, and to give advertisement in issues connected with higher education law. Last but not least, he is in close contact with the chair of the Colleague Council for Legal Redress in Student Affairs during the inquiries in the course of the student appeals for the rector of the university. Tamás, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Excuse me, thank you. And I try to share my screen and start my presentation. Can you see my
Yes,
screen?
it's visible.
Yes, thanks. During the last question, we knew that the universities don't do their best to teach the democratic values. So I think this presentation is about these topics. This topic because we at the University of Szeged are trying to promote this situation. And if we saw the factors of democracy, we found that one of the main factors is the active participation of the people within an environment. There is a rule of law. We think that the students are able to participate in the university life to show democratic awareness if they are aware of their legal options, and therefore the raising of the legal literacy may promote the democratic awareness and the activity. So I think that in Hungary there is a great program of the activity of all the citizens, not just the students, but all of the country. And if there will not be any increase this activity, we cannot maintain and create the democracy. If there is no people, no demos in Greek term, there will no democracy. So what can we do to promote this thing? We can start a course, a course that try to teach to the legal background within the students can show their democratic activity. In Hungary, the 4% of credits of a degree program must consist of elective curriculum courses. So every student of our university can register for our course titled Student Rights in Hungarian Education, that was started in the academic year 2017 for Hungarian students, and recently for international students. And we are applying a dual approach. We present theoric part to teach the effective law of the higher education and the university regulations, and there is a module at a part dealing with the practice, the actual application of laws and the regulations at the university, the hotspots we feel, the blocking points we see, and case studies of actual student problems. So this slide shows the topics of the course, the theoric parts, which lecturer is the chair of the university body dealing with the student problems, Dr. Kálmán János, and the practical part is presented by me. The student data management, it's the time of the GDPR, the consciousness in the data protections. The Hungarian state grants and the scholarships for international students, what is the laws, how can you lose it? For example, how can the students to avoid the dropping out? What are the specifications of the credit system? What about the financial issues, the fees, and what kind of allowances you can get at the university, and how to appeal against the injustice things if they occur at the university, because democracy is some kind of try and terror process. The rule of law means that you can correct the injustice things. And some facts on the course, we hold it in a blended form in person and with real-time staging and recordings. There's ethic contact hours per semester, 2 ECTS credits to promote the curriculum, and we have already talked about I think 800 Hungarian students and 120 international students, and some slides, selected slides from the lessons showing the hierarchy on legal system to know, and the data processors and the relevant data they are processed in the university. Thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rachko.
Then, thank you, Tamas. We're going to continue with our next speaker, which is Martina Kübler from Arbeiterkind. And Martina is the program coordinator of Arbeiterkind in Bavaria. And Arbeiterkind is the largest non-profit organization supporting first-generation students in Germany. And a first-generation student herself, Maria obtained her PhD in American literature from LMU Munich in 2020 and volunteered with Arbeiterkind as a mentor for younger students throughout her graduate studies. Maria, the floor, Martina, sorry, my mistake. Martina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Maria, Martina, that's confusing. So thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this conference about democratic values in the classroom. And I think I move away a little bit from this topic because I talk a little more about who gets to sit in this classroom in the first place, who gets to participate in these democratic values in the classroom. I'm going to share my slides. Let's see. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes, and I will also present some, okay, let me see. I will present some numbers that are obviously from Germany because we are active in Germany. So I hope that you can transfer this or think about how these things work in your country. And I'd also be interested to hear at the end if there are any differences or similarities to how things are going in France or in Hungary or in Portugal, for example. And before I talk more about Arbeiterkind and our organization, I will start with the problem or the status quo that we are facing. And because in Germany, the likeliness of whether a young person will go to college or not still significantly depends on that person's family background, and especially on whether their parents went to college or to university or not. So we will look at, and I promise this is the only graph and the only statistic I will be showing, but it's actually very interesting. So here you can see it's called the education funnel because it's kind of a trickle down effect. So you can see 100 first generation students who start elementary school, so 100 children whose parents do not have college degrees, and they are compared to 100 elementary school students whose parents hold degrees. So if we look at this group on the right, their parents have already gone to university, and then they graduate from high school, and they go to 79 of these students whose parents also went to university, then go to university themselves. But if we look at the other side, at first generation students, so at children from parents without college degrees, the number of children who actually go to college later is as low as 27, so 27%. So that means that the likelihood of you going to college is almost 3 times as high if your parents went to college. And then if we continue to look at these 27, 20 will later finish with their bachelor's degrees, and only 11 out of these 100 students from the beginning will graduate with a master's. On the side of children or students whose parents have college degrees, 64 will graduate with a bachelor's, and 43 will eventually obtain a master's degree. So that's 4 times as many. So these numbers show that social background, and especially parents' educational history, are still a very, very significant factor in Germany when it comes to who will go on to pursue a university degree and who won't. And especially if we look at the threshold between school and college, that's very interesting. So if we look at these numbers here, like the second and the third bubble, we basically have high school graduates. So these are people who are equally smart, equally qualified, you could say, But many more of whose parents already had degrees move on to college. So these small blue numbers here are the transition rates. So 95% of high school graduates whose parents already had degrees will go to college, and only 59% of students whose parents did not go to college will then move from high school to college. So yeah, there's a significant difference here. And yeah, I think we have to keep in mind that these are people who have high school diplomas, so they are equally smart, equally qualified, but still they make very different decisions. So I will stop with the numbers talk now, and we can think about, I will tell you a little bit more about why that is the case. So what are the obstacles and challenges for first generation students? Why do so many choose not to go on to college? Or also, why do many more of them drop out once they have already taken up studies at university? So obviously, there are many different reasons. People are very different, and I will just try to give you an overview of some of the possible reasons. They're also obviously not the same for everyone. But first and foremost, obviously, there are financial challenges arising because, as always, money matters. And one important reason why a young person might choose not to go to college is lack of funding. It's as simple as that. They often don't know how to afford college, tuition, living costs, but also foregone income, because working class parents are more likely to be poor or just have a smaller disposable income, and thus are less likely to be able to pay for their children's college education. And then another reason is also that first generation students often are very self-reliant. They have to pay for college out of their own pockets, which means that they have to work while they attend university. They have student jobs, and they have to worry about paying the bills. And they therefore often take longer to finish their studies. They are more likely to drop out because it all gets too much. And they're also less able to focus solely on their coursework, which makes it a lot harder to finish. And then the third reason to do with money is that students from working class backgrounds are frequently ill-informed about funding possibilities, even if such possibilities are there technically. So they just don't know about financial aid, about scholarships, etc. They either don't know that these things exist, or they think they're not eligible, because many scholarships have things like you should do community service to be able to receive this scholarship, and then people from working class backgrounds think, well, I was never able to do community service because I had to work. And then they think, that's not for me. I will never be able to get a scholarship anyway, so I will not be applying. And even if they know that scholarships and financial aids exist, children or students from working class backgrounds often have been taught things like we do not take charity, we stand on our own two legs, etc. So they're kind of hesitant to take that money even if it is available. Yeah, and then next to the financial challenges, there are also some cultural challenges that are faced by first generation students or from prospective students from working class backgrounds. One is that academic institutions and all these educated people at university kind of represent a normal life. And normal life, I say it in air quotes, because you go to university and everybody pretends that what is a bourgeois education is something that is normal. So you come to university and everybody talks about maybe how they went to the museum or the opera or the theater as a child, how their parents have studied, how their parents have lots of books at home, etc., how they listen maybe to classical music. So you go there and you notice, oh, these are not things that I did growing up. And you might feel kind of different, or you might feel outcast, and also maybe some amount of shame about your about your background. And then another problem might be that you have no one or you have no experience with this academic habitus that everybody else seems to have at university. So everybody behaves and speaks kind of differently from what you're used to from home. Everybody is really natural with formal language, with forms of address. I remember when I was in my first years, I noticed that other people seem to know how to behave at galas or at conferences. And I was like, ooh, these are just things that seem normal to everybody else, but that are very new if you're a first generation student. And you often feel some pressure to assimilate and also maybe to hide your background and where you come from. And then what these students also often face are conflicts or estrangements from their own families, because they're sort of living in two worlds, or actually also between two worlds. So you have this new academic world that you're trying to belong to, but you also have your family back home who don't know what you're actually doing at university, who don't know what you're studying. So you kind of have to navigate these two worlds, and that can be very interesting, but also stressful for these students. Excuse me. And then the third kinds of challenges that I will be presenting are social challenges as well. So if your parents haven't gone to university, you obviously have no role models in the family. You also maybe have no idea what is actually possible, like what careers are even out there, what careers you can go into when you study. Many first generation students actually said, well, when I was growing up, the only people I knew with college degrees were my teachers and doctors. Like, I didn't know what other careers are out there. So that can become a problem. It doesn't have to be, but can be. And also there's just no academic experience in the family. So no one to turn to for advice, especially in your first semesters. No one to ask about how does college even work? How do I apply, etc. And also, how do I write a paper? Just questions like that that other people can maybe just ask around the kitchen table. You have no one to turn to. And then the last challenge is that also very important, that you have no professional networks. So no contacts to gain access to places where gatekeeping is practiced. So it's really hard for first generation students to get internships, to get first jobs and opportunities, just because they don't have anyone in their immediate surroundings to ask. So yeah, that sounded very negative, but we also have to keep in mind that, and this is a really big but, if first generation students manage to go to university and find their way through college in spite of all these obstacles that I just mentioned, that makes them extremely resilient. So they're kind of like pioneers, right? They're going on into this new world that no one else in their family has been to before. And they have sort of a unique skill set, making them very self-reliant. They're used to fighting for things, having nothing handed to them, and figuring out everything on their own. And another thing that I'm really proud of is that as a first generation student, you know how to talk to everyone, right? You know how to talk to all kinds of people because you've literally lived in both these worlds. So yeah, that is sort of the situation into which the organization that I work for, Arbeiterkind.de, was founded. So as I already said, it's the largest donation-based nonprofit organization for first generation students in Germany. So since 2008, which is when it started as a website, we have worked for equality of opportunity in higher education. And we just offer support for college students who are the first in their family to go to college, and also for high school students in their final years or in their last 2 years who are thinking about college and who are maybe a little bit unsure about whether or not to go to college. And today we are more than this website that we started as in 2008. Arbeiterkind comprises a community of over 6,000 volunteers in over 80 local groups in Germany. And Arbeiterkind, for those of you who are not native speakers of German, actually literally translates as working class child or maybe worker's child. But it actually, what we mean with that term, it's actually a historic term in Germany, I will not go into this, but what we mean is just this broader concept of first generation students, of people whose families do not have an academic tradition and who are the first to go to university and whose parents do not have a college degree. So yeah, it is our vision to give every child from a working class family just the chance for educational advancement, meaning that everybody who wishes to go to university should be able to do so, regardless of whether their parents have already gone to university or not. Yes, and how do we do this? So as I said, we have over 6,000 volunteers all over Germany and some abroad also who assist and support first generation students on their way from school to college to their first jobs. And our volunteers are mostly first generation college students themselves, or some are already graduates. So they help not as professionals, but on a personal basis. Like someone else would ask their parents at the dinner table, our mentees can just turn to their mentors or to our volunteers and ask them with just any questions that they have or any problems they have regarding student life. So we have this peer-to-peer approach where volunteers offer their personal experience. And we do this, as I said, we encourage and inform students by going, like our volunteers go to schools and they just talk about their own educational history, how they figured out what to study, how they finance their studies, etc. So we go to high schools to talk to students, school students, but we also accompany and support university students, especially in their first years. So we have things like first semester orientation, but we also host open meetings in over 80 towns in Germany where you can just come with your questions. We also have a social network and obviously an email address, which you can use to ask all the questions you might have. And then what's kind of new is that we also offer support with career entry, because we found that problems first generation students might have do not only arise during their studies, but also afterwards, like when they're trying to move on to their first jobs. So we also have career mentors who are in your chosen field and who are experienced professionals and who can help you make the next step from university to your first job. Let me just see if I forgot something. Oh yes, and then like me and my colleagues from the full-time team of Arbeiterkind, we also offer workshops for teachers and university employees just to talk about this topic, social background, as a diversity category and how to address and help these students better. Yes, and as we are donation-based and volunteer-powered mostly, we always say that there are 3 ways to contribute to our community. You can donate your money, you can donate your time, or you can donate your knowledge. So yeah, if that's something you're interested in, definitely do talk to me about it. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, I'd be interested to hear also how these things work in your country that are not Germany. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. And yeah, if you have any questions or want to share anything, you can post it in the Q&A section. And Martina, someone wrote already that the numbers in Portugal are more or less the same as here in Germany, and as well the challenges are more or less the same. So I got one feedback already.
Oh yeah, and someone else asked something. Do you also help masters and PhD? Yes, definitely. So we have we try to pair up people. I'm sorry, am I supposed to answer now or do you want me to answer later?
And probably do it at the end because we will have one last speaker.
Yeah, so the short question is yes, and more at the end.
And then the long version at the end.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to Susanna the word.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm going to introduce our last speaker for today. She is Luca Shavarat from the University of Szeged. She's a founding member and the outgoing vice president in charge of the academic activities of ELSA Szeged. In the past months, she successfully passed all her state exams at the Faculty of Law and Political Sciences in Szeged, and she's going to be officially a doctor in law in July. So Luca, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the kind introduction. As you heard before, my name is Luca Shavarat, and I have the honor of representing ELSA Szeged in front of you today. We couldn't have imagined a more distinguished way to end our first year. Thank you for the opportunity. ELSA Szeged is part of an enormous regional cooperation between ambitious law students and young lawyers, namely the European Law Students Association. As of date, ELSA is represented in more than 44 countries throughout Europe and beyond. The International Board organizes academic and professional events such as seminars, student exchange programs, summer schools, and moot court competitions in order to encourage students to broaden their horizons. We started our journey on the local level a year ago and have since organized 12 programs. After a year of dedication and hard work, I can proudly say that we became an integral part of the law school community in Szeged. As I was preparing for this conference, I tried to recall our past year in my mind. Standing up for democratic values was an indispensable goal for us, as almost all our programs aim to emphasize the importance of such principles. Then the questions arise, which democratic values were prioritized by us in the past year and what aspects had contributed to this election. Our association tried to reflect on the ongoing challenges of the 21st century, as we truly believe that open discussion is the key to solving problems affecting all of us. According to our Ars Poetica, the eternal need for mutual understanding is the driving force of our society. For the rest of my presentation, I'm going to show you the democratic values that we decided to focus on this year, as well as the intentions behind them. I hope that you can all relate to our list of values. The first value would be freedom of expression, which may not require a unique explanation, as it is an inherent element of the European culture since the Enlightenment. However, the explosion of artificial intelligence has led jurisprudence to new challenges, particularly in the context of social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. In order to reflect on current issues, we organized an interdisciplinary roundtable discussion to examine the role of the state in guaranteeing freedom of expression online, the misuses of algorithms, and the functioning of the Facebook Oversight Board. We considered not only constitutional, but civil law aspects as well, with 3 professors and approximately 40 interested students from the University of Szeged. The rule of law is one of the fundamental values of the European Union, as well as the Council of Europe. Therefore, as a local member of the European cooperation, it is not a coincidence that we favor this principle with 2 roundtable discussions. As you may all know, 2022 was the year of the general elections of members of the Hungarian National Assembly. In the first week of the official campaign period, we held a roundtable discussion on the United Opposition's election premises on the constitution-making process. As a politically neutral association and by the principle of equality of arms, we had invited a pro-government politician, one of the opposition's public law experts, and 2 constitutional lawyers to debate on the matter. Approximately 100 people had joined the discussion, and more than 1,000 Facebook users replayed the live stream video on our page. From the very beginning, we make an effort to collaborate with different departments in order to provide networking and professional opportunities for our members. In collaboration with the Institute of Criminal Law and Criminal Science, we held our third roundtable discussion of the semester, where professors and students had a chance to talk about Polish rule of issues within the criminal justice system with a Polish criminal lawyer from Lublin. In Szeged, we believe that young people are the future and popular opinions as just as valuable as anyone else's. In the name of neutrality, we aim to encourage them to take an informed and well-grounded part in the shaping of public affairs. Therefore, we decided to hold lectures for high school students and discuss fundamental topics such as popular sovereignty, the separation of powers, the principles of democratic elections, and how an ideal voter proceeds. Our members went to 4 different middle schools in Szeged and gave interactive lectures for 18 classes of students before the election day. In honor of the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, we organized a presentation competition for law students who are keen on criminal law with the Institute of Criminal Law and Criminal Science. The event also celebrated ASA's fundamental values of respecting human dignity and cultural diversity. By initiating such an event, we aim to give a chance for students to take an active part in scientific discourse on how criminal law should fight racism in a democratic society. In light of the current events in Ukraine, ASA International and ASA alumni issued a statement to the International Criminal Court in which they condemned the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Besides that, the International Board has decided to create a compilation of reliable news sources as an effort to display and share trustworthy information on the applicable measures of international and human rights law. However, on a local level, our association decided to give a helping hand to those who had to flee the war. Therefore, our members made a sizable donation of essential supplies, such as durable food and hygiene items for the House of Nationality in Szeged. Solidarity, social awareness, and social responsibility are top priorities for us. Therefore, we tend to organize at least one caritative event each semester. Not only did we make donations for Ukrainian refugees, but we also organized our own charity events in collaboration with the Pro Bono Law Clinic as well. Our caritative efforts accepted donations on behalf of children in need and disadvantaged families in Szeged. In 5 days, we filled 15 cartons of durable food and Santa packages just in time for Christmas. Environmental protection is especially important for us among other socially sensitive tests that we have contacted an ambitious group of middle school students named Teen Treasures who regularly organize cleanup actions in Szeged. We organized a call for action event together to celebrate Earth Day, where roughly 40 bags of trash were collected by the enthusiastic locals and the members of Teen Treasures and ASA Szeged. Besides being an active member of an international corporation, we fully believe that a community which is incapable of learning from its past won't have a brighter future either. Therefore, we make it a priority to care for Hungarian national events and traditions. On March 15th, our members visited the statue of one of our greatest poets, Sándor Petőfi, to commemorate the heroes of the Hungarian Revolution of 1848. Last but not least, we believe that democratic values can only be guaranteed if we think and act as a community. For this matter, we have to initiate conversations and find the possible solutions for the challenges we face together. As you hopefully all realized during the presentation, we organize our events to find common ground and to understand each voice of our society. In our opinion, effective community development does not only contain professional and socially sensitive programs, but notices the need for less formal events as well. Therefore, we organized a quiz night for students of the law faculty to compete against each other in different fields of the law. Furthermore, we organized a self-improvement seminar for our members in order to help guide them through the many challenges of the legal profession. Democratic values are constantly challenged by political and economic interests. Therefore, we aim to encourage members of our society to partake in the shaping of public life and to uphold the inherent values of democratic societies. Throughout my presentation, I focused on highlighting events that pay tribute to democratic values. As an association, we give the green light to scientific debate where substantiated arguments can freely meet, in the hopes of educating students to become socially responsible and sensitive members of our society. We believe that the solution is always in the similarities, not in the differences. Thus, we must raise awareness on problems which affect our society. As Benjamin Franklin once said, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. If our association gets your attention and you would like to be informed about our activity in the future, please start following our social media platforms. And if you have any suggestions for us, don't hesitate to contact us via email. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Lutza, for the presentation. Okay, now we arrived to the very last segment of our e-conference, which is the Q&A. So if you have a burning question that you feel you want to know the answer to, now it's the time to post it into the Q&A segment. For now, we have a few questions there. One of them is actually going to Arbeiterkind. Does Arbeiterkind has connections with similar associations working in other countries? And in yes, what countries? Martina.
Yes, I'm trying to think. I mean, we're mostly active in Germany as of right now, and we have some people who were active in our community in Germany and then moved abroad and took their groups with them. So we have a group in Spain, I think, in France, in the US, and in Brussels. But I think for now we're pretty Germany focused. Obviously, there's room to grow, and we're always looking for inspiration also how people are solving this problem in other countries. Especially, I think in the last years, we had sort of an eye toward the Anglo-American context, because there, this topic of first-generation students, I think, has a little bit of a longer tradition, and it is more of a positive identity, whereas in Germany, it was, for a long time, it was something negative. If you come from a family, a working class family, you tended to hide it or not talk about it or pretend otherwise in the university context, whereas in the US, it's a very positive thing to be very proud of, to be the first person to have gone this route and to have accomplished that. So yeah, so we're definitely trying to do that, to be proud of it and to make it a positive identity. But for now, I think most of our collaborations are pretty Germany focused. Yeah, but definitely let me know if you know of something similar in other European countries.
It would be great to have such operatives working in all the countries. So hopefully there will be room for collaborations in the future. Our next question is from Gabriela. I would like to know about the opinions which don't respect the minorities. Are them to have the right to exist? and how to recognize when opinion is a threat to the minorities, because I think sometimes it's quite difficult to understand when somebody's opinion can be a threat. Anybody of our speakers would like to? Reply.
Since I spoke about minorities, maybe this is, I'm trying to make a first point. And it's a complex question, and it's also a difficult question, because I think we need to differentiate. So are people like in a structural political way against minorities? How did they communicate this? And I've learned that sometimes people share different opinions when they are kind of public and when they know that they're going to be instrumentalized, and if you speak to them in a personal, private manner. And so my question would be to understand, what is it, what people are thriving, why are they trying not to accept minorities, and what is it what they are looking for and what they actually need. The second thing over here is also to understand that we have different answers to these questions if we are looking on this in a large scale, like societal scale, or if we are speaking about the classroom level. And if we are speaking about sociology, and then this question will be answered in a different way than if we speak about this in the classroom. And looking into university and classrooms, I would say give a talk a try to understand why are people saying what they say. Yeah, so this would be a little try to understand, but I totally understand that this is not complete. Yeah, and that it is a huge question, but I would say in a classroom, in a global classroom, try to understand why people are saying what they are saying.
Thank you, Maria. I think Mr. Rachko raised his hand.
Yes, thank you. I'm a member of some minority groups, as you can hear. One of them, and I think that the threats can be avoided only during communication of the parties. If majority and the minority can talk each other and share their point of view, and that can be a positive feedback from the minority, and to press the majority to avoid these threats. But I think the communication cannot be done if the majority represses all of some sections of their views, fearing to be obsessive to the minority. And there, I think we must allow the expression of negative opinions, unless their remain to opinion and not act against the minorities. This is how minority can give feedback to the majority. If they don't speak with each other in a true way, there will be problems, I think, after all. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, communication is of key importance in this matter. So our next question is from Dennis. He said, thank you very much for the presentation. I've been thinking a lot about one thing regarding the government elections. Usually the results depend on the vast majority decision, but most people don't understand politics at all. They are really not into politics. And if you ask them anything, what has happened, for example, they will not be able to tell you. Moreover, the gap between the education levels are very, very significant. So the question is, do you think that people who can really see things and evaluate them properly, scientifically, reasonably, in whatever way, should they have the same voting rights during the elections than those who are just simply ignorant or don't really know about it? Because Dennis can find this sometimes unfair. Yes, Mr. Rachko.
So the original version of democracy was not a democracy in modern terms, because the citizens who have rights to vote was only a small group, and the other group were these slaves. This problem emerges when we think about the on this question whether to allow everybody to vote or not. If there is who can decide it in it, and this decision cannot be a democratic decision if there is a measure regarding the education. These who will not be able to learn their poverty, for example, they will be depressed, but maybe they can have a proper view of of the country. So I cannot cite Churchill in its original way, but he said that democracy is a bad thing, but he don't know a better solution for the society. So I think this unfair democracy is the fairest thing of the possible solutions. We in Hungary and in the distant Central Europe tried to elaborate a better solution in form of communism, but it was a less good option, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria. Maybe you raised your hand mistakenly.
No, sorry,
okay.
I was still muted.
Oh,
Too many
okay.
buttons to press. Sorry. So I just wanted to send to add on what Mr. Roczko said, and so I think, Dennis, I would like to invite you to reflect on what is your perspective on the humankind. What do you think about humans? And because I'm not sure, but it might be that you are proposing to change to meritocracy, and then we have this systemic issues Martina was speaking about, you know. So it's the question, how do we get access to education? And if only people who are more educated should vote, then this is unfair as well, as it was mentioned. And I also liked very much the point from the first contribution from Mr. Roczko, who said it is about feedback. And if people do not understand what the vote is about, then this is a very important feedback to the people, and people should aim to make it more clear and to make it more participatory and more inclusive what they are actually speaking about. And this is also something you can really practice in the classroom. And so think about the question, does really everyone has the same chances to get education? And how do you want to deal with that? Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Dennis, if you would like to reflect on what's being said, I've given you the power to speak up. So if you want to, feel free to go ahead.
Hello. Actually, I just want to thank you for comments, because I was really struggling. You know, I'm from Russia, and sometimes, you know, people in Russia are really voting for Putin, and sometimes I just don't understand why they're doing that. And sometimes, for example, I could ask people who just, for example, just finished to vote, like, what are your insights about the situation? And they can say that everything is good, everything is fine. But for me, like, from my point of view, I don't understand that them in that aspect, that how they cannot see where they, like, the politics leads, you know. So yeah, that's it. It was just my frustration.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more question in our Q&A box, which is actually focusing on a problem at the University of Szeged in one of the dormitories from a foreign student. The student claims that foreigners are deprived not only from the right to be elected as representatives, but even from the right to vote for one. And this student wants to know where to address this issue and how to sort it out. Maybe Mr. Roczko can tell us a bit more on who to turn to.
Yes. Yes. I would like the questioner write me an email about this issue, and I try to investigate. However, every student at the university have right to lodge a legal redress, an appeal to the rector, and that there will be an investigation led by my co-lecturer, Dr. Kalman Janes. But I think it's the last solution of the thing. I think that the position of the international students is not so stable as the Hungarian students, and we are trying to elaborate to extend the rights of the international students. So write to me, and we will investigate the problem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rachko. With your permission, I sent your email address to this student privately.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the support. We are running out of time, but we would like to take one question from the audience from Paris Saclay, if there's anyone. Is there anyone who wants to add a question for the speakers?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so if there are no questions, then I think we can consider this e-conference as concluded. So we would like to thank for everyone who attended this e-conference for today, and we would like to thank for all the active participation from the panelists, from the audience, and of course the supporting interpreters. And we hope that you managed to gain some newfound insight on the subject of democratic values, and you can implement this on your life and your attitude towards your community. And thank you, as always, to raise awareness on this important matter, and and taking these values with you into your life. So without further ado, we wish you a pleasant summer, pleasant rest of the week. And if you have any exams left, then good luck on your exams. And thank you once again for being with us today. See you. Goodbye.